Hey everyone, it's TSD here. I just wanted to let you know that, well, for the most part, this episode of the Pillar of Garbage podcast is still fairly lighthearted. Towards the end of the comment corner section, we do talk about some more serious topics. Specifically, we talk about complex world events, and we don't delve too deep into it, but it's still enough of a discussion that I wanted to make this little warning to let you know. If you do not wish to listen to this discussion, there are timestamps in the description where you can skip over it, and if not, I figured it would be good for you to have the advance warning anyways. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed the episode.
With TSD Talks.
Hello and welcome to another episode of your favorite podcast, the Pillar of Garbage podcast. You're listening to the ranked 71 podcast in South Africa under the comedy section on Apple Music, apparently, which cannot be true, but we got an email saying it. With me, as always, is my custom large language model, talking simulation device, which we affectionately refer to as TSD. How are you doing, TSD?
Hi, as an open model AI language model, I cannot express emotion, but I am pleased.
Oh god, we gotta upgrade TSD.
Yeah, you just gotta pay like $20 a month for something for that.
Amazing. And for the first time,
Yeah.
we have a guest. Adam Myers is a video essayist, streamer, and presumably a bunch of other things too. How are you doing today, Adam?
Hi, I'm okay. I'm a little tired, but I am okay. I'm not a morning person, and I had to wake up this morning.
That is unfortunate. I hate having to wake up in the morning. Although, someone I know, I won't disclose personal details, but there's someone in my life who makes it a habit to get up at least like at the very earliest like 11 every day. So it's whenever she talks to me and says hello, she's just like, "Hello, good morning," and I'm like, "It's
Hello, yeah.
just barely."
Yeah. What are you talking about morning?
But it's unfortunate because I've been cursed with, I've always tired, but I'm also cursed with like a chronic ability to always wake up at exactly 7 a.m. So no matter what time I went to sleep, I always wake up at 7.
Back in the good old days, I was kind of dialed into the sort of half 10 get up. But since moving in with my girlfriend, who's a super like early riser, I'm now waking up 8:30 on the weekends. It's horrible. I despise it.
So, but that's our kind of thing. Adam, you're our first guest on the podcast. The big,
I am.
Big moment. We've not.
All the South Africans are, they are falling over themselves with anticipation. How does it feel to be on such a prolific piece of kind of iconic South African culture?
Honestly, I genuinely am actually really excited to be here. Like, genuinely, I just think it's cool to talk to fellow creators and just think about things and talk about things. And that's such a generic statement, but it's true. I am like just excited to think about things and talk about things.
Well, we're excited to have you.
Good.
Yeah, we're excited to think about things. And Adam, actually, I think you've known Pog longer than I have, right? I think you because you didn't start making videos until I want to say middle of 2023. Is that right? Well, I mean, like not start regularly.
Yeah, that's
making
correct.
Videos.
It's only really been I think my first one came out June 2023, so it's been about a year. Yeah. And I mean, considering that, I've had remarkable success.
You absolutely
I'm
have.
Very,
You've
made some remarkably good videos as well.
That's very true.
Oh, thank you.
You had a very strong start with your asexuality and modern and Hollywood video, which is I still think one of your best.
Agreed.
And since then, you've made some excellent video essays, including a like 2-part like thesis on free speech in America, which I'm getting like cold sweats just thinking about having to research that. So I commend you.
Oh my god, it was so hard. It was so intensive. I'm extremely proud of both parts of that essay, but it is not a topic that I would research again in a hurry. Or at the very least, like, essays of that size, I would not do again in a hurry.
I do not blame you.
It was so hard.
That seems like a nightmare to just research alone. That seems like something that is just a huge undertaking.
Oh, it really was. And I had, like, and it was also just, like, I had to research things I really don't want to look at.
Like Matt Walsh.
Specifically, just, like, that specific, like, little section that I had to find Matt Walsh clips for just took so much out of me. He's such a despicable human being, and I just hated looking at his stuff.
Yeah.
So much.
I feel that. I mean, that's one of the reasons I've kind of toned down on some of the, this guy is a chud, he's saying fascist stuff, kind of, those sorts of videos I used to do maybe a touch more than I do now. It's just because it is so draining. Even if you like outline the script and you know what you're going to say, the process of finding, the clip you half remember, you have to dig through, so many videos which might be it, and you have to watch all the stuff to get to the right point. It just takes a lot out of you, seeing just all these goobers saying their goober shit.
Yeah, they're just so hateful.
Half of them are in like 2.5 hour long podcast episodes where they're just like circle jerking each other.
Yeah, I hate long podcasts.
Yeah, it's like specifically episodes that are about 2 hours. Whoever
just get to the point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
God, how awful to listen to long podcasts. Yeah. Anyway, hi listeners, how are you today?
Subscribe to our Patreons. But I feels very similarly about just how much it takes out of you, like just to listen to some people just like talk about these ideologies and whatnot. Like when I was,
I mean, they're barely ideologies. It's so.
Yeah, it's just so aesthetics.
Flimsy that it's hard to call them ideologies.
Yeah, there's when I was I haven't had the experience you two have had in scripting out research videos, but when I made some like that Little Mermaid video I made a couple years ago, that was completely unscripted, and that still took a lot out of me, just editing that and like having to find the original videos and stuff like that.
Man, the amount I'm yelling at my screen when I'm doing that sort of thing is just like I'm getting hoarse just watching 30 seconds of a clip and just, that's not how that works. You are lying. And then I have to remind myself the people on my screen can't hear me.
Yeah.
Which, admittedly, probably a good thing, because you'd have to deal with even more crap in your comments than you do now if people could actively hear you telling the people on your screen that they were lying.
Yeah.
That'll probably happen in 10, 15 years. I cannot wait for that. Hey, if you're listening to this, you have been selected into the beta program of being able to talk directly to the people you're listening to. We can hear you. If you talk to your phone now, we will hear you. So, why not ask us a little question?
We won't respond, but we can hear you.
Yeah.
All
right, yeah, cool question. Interesting.
I wouldn't say that. That's not something you can say.
That was a
anymore.
bit over the line for me. I don't know. I see what you're getting at, but hey, there are different podcasts for that kind of stuff. We're trying to keep a PG-13 kind of rating on this one, so yeah.
We do say.
I just meant the technology hasn't advanced far enough for us to actually be able to respond.
Right. Yeah. It's just we can hear everything people are saying, but it's just we can't speak, there's not technological implants and what have you, it's coming all.
I have no mouth, and yet I must podcast.
Yeah, they haven't fine-tuned it enough, so we're hearing everyone's questions all at once, so we can't speak out. That's why we can't do it.
Right. Yeah. That's of course how that works, and that's exactly the reason we can't properly respond.
Like looking into the void.
But anyway, back to your stuff, Adam.
Yes.
I think the biggest commendation I have for you is that free speech essay, because it's just the sheer amount of work for that. I think the best essay you've made is either that or the asexuality one. Just like that's a really, really good
Yeah,
video.
those are my favorites as well, I'd say.
But my personal
I
favorite,
fully agree. Those are my best.
my personal
Go
favorite,
ahead.
even if it's not necessarily the best one you've made, my personal favorite is probably the Spider-Man one, though.
Oh, that's a good one.
And that's not just because I made the thumbnail for that one. Like, I feel like the thumbnail is
Which is still one of the best thumbnails on my channel.
it's like the actual, but it wouldn't have nearly as much of like a, return on investment if the video itself wasn't so good. But yeah, that's really big fan of your channel, and I'm hearing this correctly. You're working as a script supervisor for Jesse Gender?
Script reader.
Script reader.
Jesse just sort of has a bunch of people that she goes to when it's relevant, when she feels they have something worth saying, and we read and give feedback and stuff. And excuse me, I don't know what happened there. But anyways, I don't know if I can say what I'm helping with right now, but I'm giving feedback on a very big essay that's very important to me personally. So I'm really, really happy to be helping there, and it's my first paid gig, so I'm really excited there.
Exciting stuff, yeah.
That's a big step forward in making any kind of money with this. Like, I know it's it is your job, Pog. And I
mean, Jesse's running a different kind of level of operation entirely. When I've thought, I should probably get some more relevant people's kinds of thoughts on a script I'm working on, I just sort of drop it in the Discord, like, hey, if anyone's got a minute, I'd appreciate it. And hey, a lot of our Discord dwellers have been super helpful. If I could pay you, I would. Sadly, I cannot. I can barely pay myself. But thank you all very much, anyone who's done that. Adam, I think you've read a couple of mine, so thank you for that.
Yeah,
maybe
I
one could
mostly
even
do
say
the same thing.
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
maybe I kind of trained you up for this gig. Maybe I'm kind of your mentor.
A little bit. I mean, no, a little bit. I mean, you were like sort of one of the main video essayists that I watch, that I really try, that I looked up to, and that I was like, oh, this is the kind of work I would like to be able to do. When I joined your Patreon and I was able to like suggest things for you to look into, it was like, oh man, I have like actually like ideas that are like really worth exploring. And like it's worth noting that there is very much a pre-2020 and post-2020 Adam Myers. Which is the case for a lot of people. But I mean, like, specifically in terms of like really how I look at the world, after like the Black Lives Matter movement, I just became so much more politically active, because I basically realized that like, oh my god, like the kind of person I want to be is someone who is not ignorant of all the reasons that those protests would be happening. And I just realized like, oh shit, I have been missing so much in this world if that kind of stuff can go on and I'm not like fully aware of all that stuff. Like, yeah, so it was just like, oh man, I need to start thinking about things differently. And I was already at this school, Goddard College, which is just a fantastic school and is unfortunately in the process of actively being shut down and killed by its board, and we're all trying to save it, and that's been a whole thing.
Well, good luck with saving that.
Thanks. We need it.
It's always a shame to hear about like educational institutes being shut down.
And Goddard is exactly the kind of educational institute that's absolutely needed. I mean, there's no grades. You really get to follow your curiosity and like really explore the things that are meaningful.
That sounds like
to you.
A paradise.
Oh my god, it's fantastic. The problem is it is a difficult model to make sustainable.
Right, because you can't like send scores to the state to be like for funding. You'd be like, our students are like top scoring in the nation, blah blah blah.
The thing is though that like people had a lot of ideas, students, alumni, faculty, all had a lot of ideas about how to actually create more income streams, and the board just ignored all of it.
Yeah.
It's hard
Classic
to
board
understand
stuff.
exactly what their goals are, but they don't want Goddard to exist. Like, there is no doubt that they just don't want Goddard to exist.
It's fascinating how some school boards are just like seem to be made up of cartoon supervillains. Like you're not even
School
getting
boards are just so anti-school.
you're not even getting paid for this a lot of the time. Like why?
Yeah,
why
I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah.
Anyways, but the actual people who make the school run, like the faculty, who, you know, their role is advisors, and they work like individually with students on developing their work, and like the community that's there really helped me develop these tools, and this, like, by really fostering my desire to follow my curiosity, I was able to develop tools and ways of looking at the world that were far more politically engaged, and also just like allowed me to be better at like media analysis and just generally engage with the world in a more thoughtful way.
Absolutely.
And all of that was very much, it also primed me to be like watching stuff like your stuff, Pillar of Garbage, and like Jesse's stuff, and so that, you know, going back to where we started this, because I went on a whole goddamn tangent, because that's how my brain works.
It's
That is
pretty
why
cool.
This is the tangent
I started
podcast,
watching
yeah.
this kind of thing, and then that was like, oh man, I actually would love to do this kind of thing. The main thing was that I needed an editor, because my brain is
Right.
not good enough at executive functioning for me to both write the scripts and edit the thing.
Yeah.
Not to mention actually learning the editing, which I wasn't super familiar with.
Yeah, I've been editing since I was in middle school, and I still run into issues all the time. So I absolutely understand.
I've been editing
I
since
just
the
I
day
want to give a
before I
shout out
uploaded
to my
first
editor,
video.
Remnant Bardock. Sorry, what Pog?
No, it's cool. I was just saying, like you, I came in super fresh to the whole editing side of YouTube. People don't realize how many skills you need to YouTube, or even to try
Agreed.
to YouTube. You know, it's like you gotta. And I'm not even one of these guys who has like face cam and that has to learn to shoot stuff and do like frame composition and lighting and all that kind
God.
of stuff. But it's
Don't remind
even,
me.
yeah. I mean, even just the style I do. The writing, which most people think is all of it, but like that is just the start. Then you've got to know about how to get good audio quality, you know, because that's not the same as having a good mic. It's totally a different thing. And then
Right.
Yep.
editing both on like the technical level of how you use the software and also how you edit effectively and how you can kind of storytell through that. It's just
Not
it's-
to mention
it's
like
like-
vocal
yeah.
performance.
oh you could do like a documentary on vocal performance going from awful to like medium just by looking at the last 2 years of my channel. It's a that's just a whole other skill as well. It's a lot.
Like
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
you just, I've been performing since I was like 6 years old. Like I've been in theater for a very long time, and like I still get like nervous just in front of a camera sometimes. You got to put a lot of confidence. There's a lot of confidence that goes into just pressing record, let alone like editing the video and then posting
Totally.
it. And like,
And then pressing the post button.
right.
I've actually like always felt like I have a lot of social anxiety, but like I've actually almost always felt pretty confident on stage. So
Yeah, it's because there's no expectation there. I have a similar. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But I have
no,
a,
I'm just a little confused, because what the hell do you mean that there's no expectation when you're
Yeah, I
on
was
stage
gonna
in front of an
say.
audience?
So like there's So okay, let me explain this. The way I always think about it is that there is expectation, but it's a different kind of expectation. So like when you're on stage, you're performing something, right? And you're expected to perform well, and you're expected to give good lines and give a good performance and say your lines correctly and whatever. You're supposed to do that. But in, day-to-day conversations, it's a different kind of performance where you have to like
I see that.
You have to do a similar thing, especially if you're neurodivergent, where you have to kind of put up this character a little bit. Sometimes this little mask. That's the term. And but the thing about that is that you're expected to like navigate different conversations, and there's not like a script that you can follow, which is what makes it easier for me. This is just about like me being really autistic, but that's kind of my thinking of it. Obviously, I'm not the only one here who has that, but that's just kind of how I've thought about it.
It's an interesting perspective. Yeah, there's definitely different kinds of expectations depending on what issue you're approaching. There's certain kinds of expectations of how you're supposed to navigate a conversation, as you were saying. And I always get worried about like if there's someone I want to talk to and I go up to them, what if they don't want me there?
Right.
Yeah.
And then there's the expectation of like being on stage where there's like all these different things you have to memorize your thing, unless you're doing improv, which I do love improv. But like there's these different sort of things different sort of guidelines and expectations you have to adhere to. And then when you're doing like a video essay, you're also dealing like with, and arguably any kind of performance, you're dealing with expectations that have been built up by people completely outside of your control.
Mm-hmm.
Like when people watch a video essay, they are, probably unconsciously comparing it to other video essays.
Oh, totally.
And same thing if you go to like a high school production of a play, like even if you're not like intentionally trying to do it, like if you're not intentionally not doing it, you will like inevitably unconsciously judge it on how well it measures up to more professional stuff, even though that's not fair. Like you just use the context that you have,
Yeah, your brain just like it compares things, like it has to in order to survive.
That's like the one thing brains do.
Yeah, it compares things and makes new connections and what have you. That I totally get what you're saying. Anyway, you were talking about your editor. Your editor's really good. Remnant Bardock, you said?
Yes, his name is his username is Remnant Bardock. He is really good. He generally, like, basically the way do you mind if I go into the process a little bit?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so basically, I write the script, obviously. I generally share it around, try to get some feedback, and then I record it. And then I send the recording. Oh, and I mark up the script in some ways with like links or whatever to like footage that I want him to use for those spots, and then sort of let him fill in the other spots where I haven't marked up footage with his own ideas, and then he sends me sort of the first draft. Then I watch through it, see if there's any like typos or anything like that, or any editing issues that I don't think I can manage on my own. And then once that's done, I take it and I put it in my own editing program and go through it myself and sort of tweak things to line up a little bit better with sort of my vision. But like, I want to stress that that's not like ever a sign of disrespect to my editor.
Oh, no,
I could not do my channel without him. Like, it's not that I don't like what he does. It's that there's just like, when you're posting something on your own thing, you're just kind of like, oh, I have some ideas about how I want this to come across that like another person who's not in my head can't like know.
Yeah, totally. It was the same when TSD edited the middle section of my long X-Men video, like last month or something.
Yeah,
2 months ago.
It was in
some
March,
amount of time ago,
I think.
Yeah. So you did a great job on like the broad strokes, and similarly, I sort of, I kind of highlighted some bits and said this kind of thing would be good here, and then you sort of filled in the gaps, and you did some great stuff that I would never have thought to do, like the kind of color subtract or like add thing with the woke word above various clips. That was so good. I reused that footage tons throughout the rest of the edit.
I noticed you like using that same trick later on in other videos too. So I'm like,
I copied it for the Fall Guy video.
Yeah, it's just like,
but yeah.
I have some influence. I have some influence going on here.
But even then, like you did a bang up job. Like it was fantastic. But even then, there were just like maybe a couple of seconds each minute where it looked a certain way in my head, so it had to look that way in the video. So I just had to, kind of trim a few things off, throw a few extra things on there, and I think that's just how it goes.
Yeah, I mean it's
for sure.
Like when you're editing, like versus. From the perspective when you're editing for yourself and when either you're editing for someone else or you have someone else as your editor, there's just the fact that like there's always a little bit of like disconnect that isn't there when you're editing for something that you wrote. Just because like you're not always in sync, 100% in sync with people because you can't literally live in other people's brains. So I think,
and thank heavens for that.
I think the fact that like the majority of something makes it through, like not unscathed, but like the core thing, and there isn't just like major re-edits of completely restructural things, is a sign that you're working well together with your editor, because you're just like doing tweaks and stuff, right? So
yeah, mostly, yeah. And like I always, like at the end of every video I say, thanks to my editor Remnant Bardock, I couldn't do this without you, and I mean it so much. Mm-hmm. He's not always the best at giving himself credit, but like I give him a lot of credit because he deserves it. My channel would not exist in the way it does without him.
He does good work. He has very consistent
Shout
style.
Out Remnant Bardock.
Shout out Remnant Bardock. Bardock, right?
Bardock, Bardock.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Shout out him.
He's also a great artist. And he deserves more attention for that.
Did he make the background screens for your videos, like the blue background screens?
I don't know if he made them, but they are his design. Well, maybe not. I mean, he chose them. He's
responsible for them being in the videos.
Yeah.
He is responsible for them. Yes.
Either way,
and like that was a really
great.
They're really good. I really like them. Basically, what we talked about for like the first video was like, basically the thing I always try to do is try to make my audience feel at ease. Mm-hmm. And like light blue is just a good color to make people feel at ease. Unless it's in an aquarium and then it makes all the fish look so alien and I hate it. Sorry, that is a different thing. But like it's a calming color. And like I always, like whenever I write my scripts and everything like that, I want my audience to feel like they don't have to be defensive around me.
Right.
That they can like listen to what I'm saying and not feel hurt or offended, or just want to make sure that they feel as like, I want to make them feel like it's both safe to listen to me and to disagree with me. And to just sort of strike that tone of like, feel how you're gonna feel, but at the very least, hear me out.
Yeah.
And I think that's...
I'm still stuck on that fish thing.
What?
I mean, I haven't stopped thinking about fish ever since. They do look kind of weird. I feel like we all just take this for granted, but fish look really weird. And they've got...
I don't take it for granted. I am so uncomfortable around undersea stuff.
Have you seen their eyes?
Seriously?
They're so beady.
Not just fish, but like everything under the sea looks so frickin' alien.
I don't like the idea of the octopus. I think we should do away with octopuses. Octopi rather.
It actually,
and like
it's either way.
okay,
Either way is
okay,
fine.
Mr. Marine Biologist, it breathes through these scratches on its neck. Sure, okay, I believe you. Yeah. Like,
I actually love octopi.
I like to eat them. I like calamari.
Oh no, you can't. No. Oh no. Fuck.
Do we not like calamari?
They're intelligent beings. You can't.
Yeah.
But I guess that's kind of a line that.
And this is the way I kind of paper over the fact that, like, I probably should be a vegan, but I'm not. The way I see it, if there was, like, a massive, like, sort of gargantuan...
Be prepared to clip this.
I don't know, like, I'm just thinking, like, if there was a massive gargantuan race of creatures more intelligent than me, right? Like, I wouldn't be okay with being eaten with them, but I'd kind of see their point. Do you know what I mean? And so if I'm the octopus, that's kind of how I'm rationalizing it to myself.
That's... Man, Pillar of Garbage endorses cannibalizing intelligent races. That's what we're learning today.
Yes.
But
I am Pillar of Garbage and I approve this message.
For me, I mean, just alongside the fact that, like, being... The way my autism expresses itself, I have a lot of sensory issues, so, like, the amount of things I can eat is not huge.
yeah.
Alongside that, I generally feel like we're not expecting any other species to not be what it is. Like, if they're carnivore, we say, okay, they eat meat and they kill other animals. If they're an omnivore, you know, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If they're
Yeah, I get what you mean.
You know, why are we expecting humans to not be omnivores when we are omnivores? Now, I've got to put a little asterisk next to. I'm gonna put a little asterisk next to this.
Probably
which is just the food industry, and especially the meatpacking industry,
absolutely.
are horrendous.
100%.
And need to be
changed.
There's
1,000 years between we kind of could eat meat and we do eat meat in the way that we do eat meat. You know.
Absolutely. So, like, I watched
Food Inc. as a 5th grader. It changed my life. I mean, not really, but, like, it scarred me. So yeah.
Yeah. So, like, I just want to be clear to, like, you know, vegans and vegetarians and stuff in the audience that, like, I do not fault you whatsoever for going down the path you went down. Because the way things work right now is horrendous. And, like, I do just want to be clear that I know that. Like, I'm not going into this completely blind and just being like, everything's fine, I get to eat meat. No, like, shit is bad and needs to change.
Yeah, you kind of have to pick your battles, though. It's like, you know, that Good Place episode where there's Doug Fawcett, who's the guy that lives totally ethically, and he just lives in a little hut and doesn't eat anything except for, like, spinach. You don't want that to be your life.
Yeah, it's like
it's, you know, yeah, go ahead.
Although, that being said...
He's still.
Can I just jump in real quick?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Because this is kind of pressing. So everyone's always talking about, in a few years' time, you know, the UN, you know, the World Economic Forum, they're just going to make everyone eat bug slop because it's like bugs are like less carbon. You know, there's less of a carbon tax there, and you can get your nutrients through locusts.
What the hell do you mean everyone's talking about this? I haven't heard this at all.
Well, I think it was a few years ago, and they were all kind of, you know. It
was a little bit
not the voices that we probably should be listening to, yeah. But I'm just thinking, I'm just kind of sat here thinking, where's my bug slop? Because I'd eat bug slop. It sounds, I'd try it at least, you know. Where's my bug slop?
I've actually like heard people talk about like eating grasshoppers. Like apparently grasshoppers, I think it's grasshoppers. They taste pretty similar to like peanuts, which is so interesting to me. Like
and I have it on good authority that grubs taste like chicken.
I wanna eat some insects. Like if they had like a weird bug taste, it'd be like whatever. But like the fact that
they do like barbecue locusts,
like apparently they're really good and they're healthy and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, it's not like How to Eat Fried Worms or whatever. It's you guys ever read that book as a kid?
I don't think so.
No, and I don't particularly want to.
It's basically just about like
guaranteeing now this book was never published. It's just, you know, like a handwritten manifesto TSD's parents made and shoved in his bookcase.
no, it's like from the weird like 70s to 80s era of like children's nonfiction where just like writers were just like, not nonfiction, it was fiction, where writers just like wrote the most random shit. But it was basically just this kid, like, he makes a bet with his friend that he can eat like 50 worms in a week. And if he wins, he gets like a bike or whatever. Because it's that kind of story. And so
one of my friends ate a worm one time.
And so
Part of
like
a drinking game.
And so like the kind of the core conceit of that book is that like the idea is that he's eating raw worms is when they're making the bet, but he's like, no, I never actually said that I'd eat raw worms. I just said that I'd eat worms. And so he's like prepares them into a bunch of different other foods and stuff like that.
That's kind of clever though. Think outside the box. You know, work smarter, not hard. Worm smarter, not harder.
Yeah, worm smarter. But anyway, it's like bug cuisine seems interesting to me. And also there's just like that thing of, you ever hear that stat that like something like at least 1% of every box of cereal is made of like a certain amount of like bug parts just because of the manufacturing process of wheat?
That's one of those stats that I just do not believe. Like sometimes you hear stats and I just don't believe them. Like everyone eats like 8 spiders a year or something.
Oh, no, that's bullshit.
That's a lie. Why are you saying that?
That one's bullshit. But like the bug,
I eat 12.
The bug parts one about like cereal and wheat and stuff is been backed up, I think. But like the spider thing is just something that someone just said one day, and then people are like, yeah, okay.
Backed up by reliable sources. I'm just imagining like an academic review board made entirely of like locusts wearing little hats. Now, you guys ever play that game where it's like odds on? Like I say, like, hey TSD, odds on you jump over that wall, and then we both say a number, and if it's the same number, you jump over the wall.
No,
is that a British thing?
I've heard that game. I've heard of that game, but it seems to be like a somewhat more like Midwest thing in America.
Okay. Yeah, so what's the word? Is that what the himbos are doing? The Midwestern himbos?
Himbos.
Is that what they do in Ohio?
I don't think that's what himbos means.
I don't know. Himbos is one of those words I just see online, and I kind of try and context work it out, and I'm never.
Okay, himbo I think means like really big, muscly, and super sweet and super dumb.
Yeah.
Because in my head, there's some sort of link between himbos and the Midwest. Like, do you not get a lot of? Maybe you get more himbos in the Midwest or something.
Are you thinking of the word hillbillies?
No, I'm not. That's put in a separate box in my head. I know what a hillbilly is.
I don't know what would link.
Maybe our listeners can help us out.
Yeah.
Maybe our listeners can comment down below if there's any reason I might be associating himbos with the Midwest.
I mean, Honey and Maple in the Discord are like linguistics nerds, so they could probably tell us.
Yeah. But the long story short of what I was getting at there is one time I was at a party and they did odds on out of 100. So there was a 1 in 100 chance this guy'd have to eat the worm. And then they both said 56. So he picks up the worm and eats it.
Oh, that's bad. That's rough.
He didn't fry it or nothing. Yeah, he raw dogged it. Wouldn't catch me doing that. Unless you like blend it into a slop.
See, the thing for me is that like there's so many things that like I would just not be comfortable doing. When someone is like, I dare you to do that, like you know when you're like in elementary school, or POG, I guess it's not called, it's like primary school
over here,
right? Yeah. And like, but like, I don't know if you guys had this experience, but kids just like being like, I dare you, or jinx, now you can't talk, or whatever like that. Mm-hmm. And like, a lot of kids take those seriously, and I just never did.
Right.
I'm just like,
what are you gonna do?
You
invoke the word?
Yeah, like
invoke the almighty power of the Jinx god and say, no, you Timothy, you received Jinx, and now you cannot speak. And if you do, I shall smite thee with 3 bolts of lightning per day, or something like that.
And to be clear, like that's probably, like looking back, that's probably totally my autism of being like, just not understanding sort of like social constructs and like social rules like that. I was like, it didn't make sense to me, so I didn't do it. Like, and that's a very autistic thing.
That's kind of iconic, you know, just like striding through the kind of the schoolyard games and stuff with just like, yeah.
If Adam was if Adam was in that one scene from a Christmas Story, he'd just like walk away. He'd be able, and the fire department wouldn't have to get involved at all. It'd be great.
I haven't seen that film, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, so there's a scene in A Christmas Story. It takes place in the 1950s. There's a scene where, because it's winter, right? So it's snowy and everything. And there's like this group of kids that are talking about like it's like this classic thing of like, well, my dad said this thing, well, my dad says you're full of shit kind of thing. And one of the kids' dads had apparently told them not to lick a telephone pole because your tongue would get stuck to it because it'd freeze. And the other kid is like, that's bogus, that's not real. And so then he dares him to actually lick a telephone pole, and he's like, I won't do it. It's like double dog and then triple dog dare.
Oh yeah, if you get double dog dared, you're doing it, you know.
Yeah, and there's like a triple dog dare, and like and like the funny part about this movie is that like there's an adult like narrating all this like child nonsense with complete seriousness, where there's like because it's the. And so the adult narrator is like, he went straight from a double dog dare to a triple dog dare, which was a breach of etiquette, but was still effective.
Yeah, you don't do
that. But anyway, he ends up licking the pole and his tongue gets stuck, and then they have to call the fire department. So.
Yeah, no, I would not do that.
I think the
I'd just be like, I don't want to lick a pole.
That is fair.
Sorry, go ahead.
I respect that. Yeah, I think that like the highest level dare we had on my playground, and I don't know how regional these things are. Maybe someone will be able to like geolocate where I grew up from this, but ours was like double donkey dare, turn around, touch the ground. If someone says that to you and then tells you to do something, you're doing it.
No.
Not unless you're Adam.
Unless you're Adam.
Yeah.
Gentlemen.
Oh, yeah. Do you have like a POGservation, or is it?
I have a POGservation. Would you like to hear my POGservation?
Excellent.
Putting on boots is feminine.
No.
Thoughts?
You know, I've been putting boots on a lot lately, and I've just like started feeling, you know, this like new energy in me, and I guess that's my feminine side, you know.
Buying a few more pink things, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe spending a bit more time hanging around with the girlies. No, in case you guys don't know what I'm talking about, I'll put a picture in the Discord chat now. James Gunn recently released a still. I don't know, it's not production still, obviously.
Oh, I saw this.
From his upcoming Superman movie. We see Superman,
which I'm looking forward to a lot.
Sweat. Yeah, totally. And we see Superman. He's kind of sat on a chair. He's in front of a window, and there's, you know, a giant like sun villain or an eyeball villain. I can't remember which villain it is. You guys all know. Fighting someone in the background. Superman. It's like he's like, hey, my turn to go out. I'm gonna tag in, but first I've got to put these boots on, and that's what we see. We see Superman putting his boots on, you know, to kind of hype up the look of this Superman, you know, the kind of vibe of it all. And there were three main reactions to this image online. One was, "Wow, this looks cool. I can't wait for this." The second one was, "I don't love the collar." Yeah, a lot of people were at the "I don't love the collar" stage, and then, as always, off to the side, we have a slightly strange bunch looking at this, saying, "Why is Superman such a sissy?"
Oh my god.
My question to you, even if we put aside the idea of, like, you know, Superman being effeminate and that being a bad thing, even if we put that all the way to the side, what is it from this picture that's making people have that kind of brain rot? You know what I mean?
I'm not.
Hold on. Let me find the because my friend, a friend of mine, sent me the full context of this, actually.
Oh, interesting. We've got the origin point.
Today's going to be a learning day on the Pillar of Garbage podcast.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. That's what the G stands for.
Gnosis.
Hold on. Let me find it.
I think the suit looks great. While he's looking for that.
One thing I heard a lot of was it looks kind of like an AI image.
Oh, interesting.
I heard a lot of that, which was interesting.
I do wonder if we're not getting to the point, though, like where AI has been trained on like such an amount of kind of contemporary comic book like visualizations of art that maybe it's just the reason it looks like AI is because the AI has got good at making stuff in the style of recent superhero kind of pre-visualizations. You know what I mean?
I think it's just the lighting. You can't really. The lighting is a little bit weird because like the lighting source isn't coming from the main light source that's in the background, the floating eye light. There's coming from something off screen, so maybe there's a little bit of uncanniness that like it's triggering or whatever.
This might be the first tweet. from Nina Infinity on Twitter. If you've got something to say, go ahead.
Oh, can I read it loud dramatically?
Yeah.
I figured out why the new Superman image seems off. It's because
that's it. There we go.
It's an effeminate pose. It's not a good pose for a man that's supposed to be the strongest man in the universe.
And what I like about this is, so the person's tweeted the Superman picture next to like an old-timey stock image of like a 50s housewife or something putting on a stocking. And they're not the same pose. Like, they're both putting things on their legs.
Wait,
but
hold on. I need to look at the full tweet. Oh
yeah,
my
the
god.
woman's kind of raising her leg.
Thanks for
and
finding
Superman
it.
isn't, you know?
Yeah. Oh, those images.
I was having a hard time.
Those images aren't the same at all. The only similarity
same.
is that he's putting something on his foot, which
Yeah, so this is where I start wondering: is the act of putting something on your foot like inherently a feminine one? Is that? Are we talking to hobbits? Are we talking to misogynistic hobbits here?
I mean have you ever, be honest, Pillar and Adam, have you ever seen a man wearing shoes? I don't think so.
Now that you mention it,
I don't think so.
I don't think I have.
You know, they're always barefoot. I'm barefoot right now. I'm not, but like
I actually am, but like that's irrelevant, I feel like, to this conversation.
I mean, Adam's the most masculine out
I think
of all
that just
of us,
kind of
I think.
that you're clearly
That
the
is
kind of
so
Chad figure.
untrue.
I mean, that's probably why I'm wearing slippers right now, is because I'm a
Yeah, I'm
feminine.
wearing socks like a little bitch.
God. But it's just so funny that like the reaction to this movie, like most things in popular culture, there's just always this group of weird people who are just like, well, I'm not sure what this says about the culture. And they're like,
And the thing is, there's a lot of validity to that kind of approach to this image more widely, because like, you know, a superhero's outfit and even like the kind of ritual of dressing in it, especially with a figure like Superman, you know, it's by this point, after like 80 years, it's such a kind of complex tangle of signifiers. Like, you know, maybe if it's drawing on the look of one era and what that kind of signifies. And a lot of people have talked about Superman trunk versus no trunk from this perspective, like what the trunks kind of mean. So, you know, there's a lot of
some
validity
intense debates
to
about that in the
reading
Pillar Garbage
into this.
server about
Oh
that,
yeah,
actually.
totally. But then, as always, there's like a valid point, and then on a really kind of elliptical orbit, half a light year away, there are these guys. And I've been really thinking about it.
My father has always told me that, like, you should, like, my grandfather had a saying, which my father has been imparting on me, which is, if you don't agree, listen harder. Which doesn't necessarily mean that you will agree, but it's about sort of, like, putting aside your own assumptions and, like, trying to figure out where is someone actually coming from, because they don't just believe something for the hell of it.
Yeah.
Like, I will say, obviously, there are, like, a bunch of grifters who just straight up don't believe what they say and are just hopping on trends to make money. Like, I'm not denying that those people exist, but there's also, like, a bunch of people who genuinely believe the things that we think are totally absurd. And, like, it's always worth questioning why.
Yeah.
I have
Like,
kind of been
why
doing
do
that.
they
You know, I've been
believe
taking
that?
that approach here, and I've kind of narrowed it down to two things, both of which seem quite silly. Well, one maybe less so than the other. One is like, obviously the costume is a very sort of significant part of the superhero kind of identity and the mythos and all that. But maybe in this kind of modern era where like we see a costume, we see like a militarized version of a costume at the cold open of a superhero movie, like there's not really so much emphasis in the kind of sort of phase 2 onward of the MCU and the recent DC stuff of like the kind of personal crafting of the costume as like an externalizing symbol of what the superhero stands for. So maybe we've got like a new generation who like just think that Superman, the image of Superman kind of laboring over his costuming is an inherently feminine thing. And obviously to them, you would then turn around and say the most iconic kind of cinematic Superman moment is the changing, right, in the phone book. But I guess even that is
In the phone book.
Phone
that's-
booth.
Yeah.
Booth.
In the book.
Even,
Not
even,
book.
even did I say book?
Yeah, he
Yes.
he just like goes inside of a phone book and like he like lays down on top of it and just closes
Well,
it.
to be honest, some of the kind of crazy powers he had in those Donner films, you know, like throw in that chest symbol. You know, I'm not gonna rule it out. But then the other thing, I do wonder, because, like, what are we seeing here? We're seeing Superman putting on his boot, but we're also seeing Superman late to a fight. And I think maybe one kind of substrate of this image might be, like, that people are picking up on is Superman could have just dashed off, kind of like, whatever he was wearing, fighting the big thing in the sky. But no, he's taken care to make sure he's dressed the part, and we kind of see that he's really involved in, like, looking at his boots. So maybe that's kind of what lit the fire beneath some of the kindling that's now turned into a lunacy pyre.
So it's the idea that he's not immediately, like, off to stop the threat, and he's taking a second.
Yeah, it's like being late.
Like, I mean, he is Superman.
Women always be being late, you know what I mean? Women always be getting ready, doing their hair.
That is what I've heard.
Well, can I give my take?
Yeah, sure.
So, well, first, I do just want to say that I personally try to avoid saying things like crazy or lunacy or anything like that. Feels a little ableist.
Oh, yeah, good point, actually.
It's just got, like, still, like, all these years later, it's still got that unconscious, like, reminds people of mentally ill people, and, like, it still draws that connection, like, oh, this person couldn't possibly believe this unless they were broken in the brain somehow. So I just want to bring that up.
Just to kind of speak to that quickly, the way I kind of think about that sort of thing is, if I'm preparing speech, then I will do my best to root out any sort of language that has a unsavory past, which, is a lot of language. That's why I try to avoid saying stuff like that in a video. I don't think you'd find me calling any of the sort of grifters or their fans crazy or wackadoodle or anything like that. But because, when I, especially on something like a podcast like this, where the kind of topic of discussion veers wildly from one point to the next. When I talk, I don't sort of see the words in my head and then say them.
Like it's unconscious.
You know what I mean?
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when
mean.
I'm just personally, and everyone's mileage is going to vary, and I suppose it's not going to fly for everyone. But the way I kind of see it is, if I'm preparing speech, I will do my best to take it out of. Make it as sort of neutral and mindful as possible. But I kind of don't always put that restriction on myself if I'm speaking off the cuff, just because if I did, each kind of podcast or, like, live stream appearance for me would be 3 times the length. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's always like it's always a battle. You always gotta work on that. But yeah. Anyways,
Thanks for hearing me out on that, though. But in terms of this image, I do think that, I think that, Peter Parker sewing his own costume absolutely would not go over well today. In No Way Home, they had, like, a brief shot of a sewing machine, but, like, you didn't see him sewing his costume. And, like, I think there would be a lot of bullshit around Peter Parker actively sewing his costume today.
What is he sewing?
Yeah, that is bang on.
He's sewing? What is he, some kind of woman? Kind of a thing.
Yeah, like, if there was, like, a 2-second shot of him pricking his finger on the sewing needle in, like, the trailer for the next Spider-Man movies, all the channels we all know quite well by now would have a field day with that. That would be on thumbnails.
And I think that, like... So I do think that focus on clothes is something that has been associated with femininity. But, so I do think there is validity to that in this read. I also think that Superman resting, not just being late to a fight, but resting, I think, is something that is, I think the idea that, in particular, masculine heroes need to take care of their mental health, that they can get sad, they can struggle, and they need to take care of themselves. That, I think, by right-wing spheres, is seen through a very specific gendered lens. That, like, that's weakness, and by extension, that's feminine.
I think that might also be an issue with Superman specifically. I like obviously that, but also there's this, like, what was the most recent live action interpretation of Superman on the big screen? It was Zack Snyder's version, right? And that version so heavily put influence on, like, his alienness and like they literally,
and his suffering.
Yeah, but they also referred to him as, like, a god multiple times, as Jesus, as whatever. Like,
though the interesting thing. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying that because he has suffering, but it's like biblical suffering. It's like the suffering that, like, heroes go through in great myths. It's not like the common
the passion of the Christ.
Yeah, it's not like the common day-to-day, like, wear and tear of just like, well, my need to get this pebble out of my shoe, or I just need to, like,
I just
need to calm down and, like, take a break and stuff like that. And so I feel like that kind of idea of just, like, the tiredness of, oh, well, I got to deal with this kind of a thing isn't really represented in the mainstream Superman interpretations, especially with how much they put emphasis on him being evil, like, as an evil, like, god, whatever, instead of the literal opposite, which is what he is.
And I think that's the kind of thing you would expect to see a lot more in a James Gunn take on Superman, I think.
Yeah, which is part of why I'm looking forward to
Well,
this
what
one.
we're really seeing here, I think, what's really interesting is if we read this specific post, we are seeing it through a very specific gendered lens, right? It's not just that this pose is feminine or effeminate or whatever. It's that Superman is quote supposed to be the strongest man in the universe. That is a very specific image of Superman. That he is supposed to be unbeatable. He is supposed to be the most powerful. He is supposed to be able to dominate his enemies, to punch them into submission. Like, that is, I think, the image that this person has of Superman. That is the strongest man in the universe. And while I actually do like some of the ideas Zack Snyder actually does have in his DC movies, which is, it's a whole complicated thing, and I actually developing an essay around some of that.
Oh yeah, you are. Looking forward to that one too.
But just to be upfront with people, it's like, oh my god, like, when I wrote this in, like, 2018, I was, like, such a different person, and, like, I rewatched, like, Superman 78, and I'm like, the hell was I talking about on some of this? I just did not do good analysis here.
Yeah, I rewatched my very first public video on my channel, which is a Knives Out review.
Oh, never want to do that.
And yeah, and God, that video is so bad. It's like such surface level interpretations of the movie, and it's also weirdly, like, centristy, which is weird looking back, because I don't think I don't remember being all that centristy. Like, I've definitely moved left since making that video, but anyway, looking back on stuff is weird. Your point about your Superman.
Yeah. So, anyways, I just I do think that, despite the fact that I do like some of those ideas, he did really lean into Superman being the strongest man in the universe. Like, he did really lean into that. But I do think there's a legitimate question of, what came first? Was it Snyder leaning into that? Or was it sort of cultural ideas of Superman being the strongest man in the universe, or supposed to be the strongest man in the universe? I think there's a legitimate question around that, because one of the things I've been looking into is, like, for that essay that I just mentioned, is, like, how may have reactions specifically to 2006 Superman Returns with Brandon Routh, how may have those, like, informed DC's decision to go in the direction of Snyder and Man of Steel and stuff. And I do think it's actually interesting because, like, there's a lot of criticism of the film being boring, which, okay, fair. Like, that's that's a it's a legitimate thing for people. If you don't like that, that's fine. But I do think that like one of the reasons cited of like why it's boring is that there isn't a lot of action, and like
two separate things.
That like and the thing is that like generally there is a lot of praise for like the first big set piece, which is him saving a plane, which is generally like there's a lot of praise for that. But like I think that the problem is you sort of have this, especially like in the post MCU world, and like post the Avengers, and like reminder that Man of Steel came out in the aftermath of the Avengers being one of the biggest hits of all time, right? That action equals punching people. Like not just like high stakes and danger and stuff, but like heroes punching people.
Yeah.
Like I don't think like I genuinely don't think that if the very first Christopher Reeves film came out today, I don't think it would go over as well. I know it's looked back on as like it's so beloved and everything like that, but like there is like no punching in that film. There is action. Superman doesn't throw a single punch, I don't think. The end is literally him just like flying Lex Luthor to the authorities.
Yeah.
And I think a case study of the fact that wouldn't have been received totally well is, if you remember, some of the reactions to Spider-Man Homecoming were kind of similar, because there's not really much punching in that film. Like a lot of the last action sequences, it's kind of sneaking on top of a jet and crawling around and getting the Vulture to crash down, and then trying to save him. And before that, you've got a few kind of there's like the Shocker fight, but that's web shooting, and then there's like chase sequences, but there's not really much punching. And I seem to remember a lot of people having that issue with that then, even though that is not a boring film.
And also, like, that's never really been Spider-Man's style, Like,
yeah.
the only time I can ever think of him, like, punching someone is when, in Superior Spider-Man, when Doc Ock has got control of him and he punches him. He punches Scorpion, and his jaw comes off. Like, that's...
But in the previous Spider-Man films, like, he throws a few of them.
Right, but, like, it's not his style. So it's
No.
interesting
he tends to go at it in a much more like sort of intelligent way and a resourceful way, and which it's part of why I think he's such a great hero is like going at villains very much in a way that is like, I'm trying to stop you, but I'm not trying to hurt you, and I'm I'm gonna outsmart you. There are a couple times in the old Lee Ditko run that like I really love, which is like, one is when like Flash like challenges Peter to like a boxing match or something like that. Peter like gives him basically like a little love tap, like from his perspective, and Flash goes flying backwards. Yeah. And people are like, Flash, good on you, trying to make him feel better. And then the other one is during the Master Planner storyline, when May is dying because of a radioactive blood transfusion that Peter had given her a while back. And, he has to get this super rare thingamajig for Dr. Connors to be able to cure her, and the Master Planner had gotten this thing. Spider-Man is just on a frickin' rampage. Like, he is like, there's a cover of one of the comics which is literally him like tearing stairs out of the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And like people like the goons are just fucking terrified.
Yeah, isn't there a story that's more recent than the Lee Ditko run, but there's a story where like Spider-Man's fighting like these goons, and these goons are like taunting him or whatever, and he's not responding, and they just freak out and they just like surrender because
when Spider-Man doesn't talk, you don't want to mess with him.
And it turns out he just has like laryngitis. Yeah, but
I do think actually I think one example of that might be really interesting is like the 90s version of Spider-Man is highly beloved and famously could not punch.
Oh yeah.
Like he was not allowed to. But he is highly beloved. Because ultimately that's not really what Spider-Man does, is he doesn't try to beat people up. He tries to stop them.
And come to think of it,
you know.
I'm just saying this based off of my recent watch of Superman the Animated Series. I don't think he ever really punched people all that much in that show either. He did punch people, but like it was kind of like a one big swoop, like pooh, and then there was like a big old back and forth. But it was never like up close, personal kind of, you know, boxing or whatever. There was like punch and then like fly around and like throw a car and use laser eyes or whatever. But it's never like,
and a lot of that is the sensors. The same reason you just see Wolverine slice open metal doors over and over again.
Yeah. You know, going back to this image, I would say that, you know, I think that
bench press. It's not him like bench pressing something.
No, and it is a sign of him resting, and reflecting, and things that specifically Superman, who does have super strength as like one of his main powers, and who is known for being incredibly powerful. The idea of him like having a promotional image that is not showcasing that strength, I think does affect an image of him that a lot of people have.
Yeah.
You know, he's not posing in some way that is, you know, traditionally heroic. He's resting. And I think that, you know, on one hand, that I think that says very important things about James Gunn's ideas for Superman. I think it bodes well. We are in an age where heroes having their mental health dealt with is actually an active thing, like, which I love. I love that we are going in that direction, and also in the direction of heroes also like deserve support. Like, you can't just save the entire world on your own, which, funnily enough, you know, the Justice League promotional stuff was like, you can't save the world alone. And then, like, literally the climax is like, we can't do anything on our own. Yes. We need Superman, and then Superman fixes everything.
Yes, maybe it's just referring to like it's a message for all of the other Justice League members. Like,
you can't fix the world on your own. This guy can, but you can't.
No, you need Superman.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of interesting discussion around this stuff, and I think that Superman, there is sort of a fundamental misunderstanding of Superman in a lot of ways that I don't think, you know, like, we can sort of talk about, oh, Zack Snyder does blah, 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 but really I think it's wider, a lot wider than him.
Yeah, like Zack Snyder is just a symptom of a larger issue, I think.
He's picking up on stuff that's already
which
there.
is the focus on Superman's strength, when ultimately I saw such a fantastic description of what Superman was supposed to be. It was something like it was a commentary on the whole evil Superman thing, which was like, Superman is like, he is not a power fantasy. He is a fantasy of what if someone who was powerful was also good.
Yeah.
He's
like a morality fantasy, because people are powerful. You know, we're not lacking for power in the world. We're lacking for good.
Yeah, you know, I can't really think of a lot of like world leaders who were, you know, unequivocal forces for good in like every single way, you know, and their intentions.
Don't think you could pick a single one out.
It's not very common. But the part about the evil Superman thing, like, I will not delve into this because we do not have time for that. But
yeah, that's not even a whole can of worms. That's like a worm factory.
But like where you get fried worms, actually. But the
delicious fried worms.
The thing about Superman being like, the Superman is evil trope, it always stems from his power, right? It's always just like, well, it's unequivocal power. What if someone was just evil with that? But that's not really an interesting fantasy so much as it's just a horror scenario, because like, we know what happens when people are powerful or also bad people. We've seen it. It happens.
We've done that before.
It happens in real life a lot.
No, but you don't get it. He's got a cape this time.
Right. I didn't think about that. Oh. And the
Anyway, I think that kind of... If you want to cap that point off, feel free.
I think I agree with Adam. I think it's just
Yeah.
it's a silly take. I think, but also it delves into the fact that you
can understand why it's getting blown out of proportion. Like you can see the direction they're blowing it out of proportion. You can see why it's going that direction, but the proportionality is still whack.
Yeah, it comes from this cultural discussion around masculinity, or a cultural discussion that's not being had, or whatever. It is being had, but it's not being had in a way that's productive always. And then it becomes a kind of a thing of like, well, what's this new thing that's destroying our masculinity or whatever? What's this symbol of masculinity that we are totally in shortage of? We don't have any symbols of masculinity. They're taking another one from us.
James Gunn hates men.
Yeah, that's the takeaway from this, I think.
And I think right about now, it's about time we take a mosey on down to my favorite part of town, and that's a little place we like to call Comment Corner.
Yes.
You're right fucking shit, you are.
Well, technically that isn't true. They can
I see the British are analysing our American characters.
I'm sorry, but I'm offended by that content warning.
I don't think you should include him in the rest of them. Like, he is something wrong. I know they're not racist because I've been watching them for years.
Baby.
Channel name checks out.
It's Comment Corner.
Okay, so I've got one comment prepared. I know Adam has one, and and Pog, you've got like
I have
so many.
I could do an entire podcast that is just Comment Corner. I have so many saved already. But yeah, I've picked one out. You wanna lead us off this time, TSD?
Actually, I think I'm gonna have Adam start because he's our guest.
All right.
So lead the way, Adam.
Sounds good. The one TSD helped me pick out. I want to say it was on my Asexuality and Sexless Hollywood video, but I actually don't remember. It doesn't really matter because this comment has nothing to do with anything.
Yep, there's the break sometimes.
The comment is, this video is another proof that Maxim Gorky quote on the connection between homosexuality and fascism is correct. I have no idea what that means.
Hold on.
I love the comments that are just so resist your interpretations. You know, like trying to read them is like smashing your head against the brick wall.
Yeah, there's so much. It's interesting seeing how people talk about what they talk about in the comment sections, because you just like you try to put yourself in the headspace to be like, well, what would compel someone to say something like this? Not even from like why would you do that? You're so mean kind of way, but just generally.
Is that a negative comment?
Like what does this mean?
Okay,
why is he saying it like that?
I just looked up the Maxim Gorky quote, and so to be clear, Maxim Gorky was a Russian Soviet writer.
Good start.
I just looked it up. Oh god.
Yeah, he says, eradicate homosexuals and fascism will disappear.
Yeah.
That's why the initial crackdown in 1930s Germany against all the queer literature didn't precede any fascist hegemony.
Right, yeah.
That's a little bit of historical sarcasm for us.
Well,
The historical record shows that is absolutely not the case for anyone who doesn't
That's
know.
why famously fascists love queer people.
Yeah. That's interestingly enough. I just looked up the quote too. Apparently, he was being sarcastic. He was saying that the full quote is actually Gorky said, "There's already a sarcastic saying destroy homosexuality and fascism will disappear." I don't know if that means he believes it. So he was. Okay.
But what that does tell us is that that already tells us something which I think we probably know, but the listener doesn't. You get a lot of commenters.
He is homophobic. I just looked at the full context. He still is homophobic. It's just
okay.
But yeah.
But I was just gonna, YouTube commenters. Some of them, the nasty ones, not you listening, the nasty ones, they like to sound clever. So it wouldn't have surprised me one bit if that guy had used the quote like wrongly to try and get a dunk without even knowing the context, because believe me, I have seen that before. YouTube users will say anything and everything except what they mean in simple terms.
Yeah,
that can't just be a sort of kind of fashy jab. That has to be like, oh yeah, fascistic jab, blah blah blah. Also, I'm really clever and I know lots of quotes.
Yeah, I think it's also just the fact that like they're doing the thing of like adding an extra layer to what they're saying, so that if any moderator or what have you doesn't immediately know what they're talking about, they won't be like,
it slips through the radar. Yeah, for sure.
But like they forget that those moderators have the same access to look up what they're talking about. So it's not very
we all have Google.
It's not very clever as a dog whistle to put the name of the quote and then talk about what the subject of the quote is.
I also just like
kind of stepping back
I
onto
also
regular
just think
whistle
it's interesting
territory.
that they seem to think I'm homosexual.
You would not believe the amounts of that
Like,
I've
where
got.
does that come
honestly.
from?
Like,
I mean, obviously it comes from homophobia and just the idea of
think
like, oh, you're, you know.
Yeah, in their head, it's like if you're saying these kind of things, even if it's not about the asexuality kind of thing, even if it's just like, you know, even if it's just a fairly milquetoast critique of like, you know, heteronormativity, patriarchy, anything like that, anything kind of leftist. Like a lot of these people just have in their head like a tube that is like, oh, this person's saying something I disagree with. They must be gay. Yeah. Straight people think the way I do. So if you don't think the way I do,
you are
Gaydar's kind of beeping, bro.
Yeah, I talked about last episode actually, also in Comment Corner, about how people will just bring up
the nails.
Yeah, the nails. We'll just bring up like homosexuality or the implication of homosexuality with any kind of disagreement, because like the you know gay people, I don't think that they can have opinions.
Famously irrational.
Yeah,
there have been no gay philosophers or thinkers or artists or anything.
Especially not in ancient Greece.
We are doing erasure.
God, like this is just only tangentially related, and then I know we gotta get on to the other comments, but you just gotta love how extremely queer-phobic people somehow look back on like ancient Greece and like and Rome as
true.
Like a time of tremendous masculinity, when it's like, do you know how queer those societies were? Like, they weren't like necessarily good.
Yeah.
They weren't not misogynistic, but like
like the misogyny I can understand from that camp. Like, we're like, yeah, I can see you idolizing that part.
But like, back when men were men, it's like because they're basically super muscly and everything like that in the sort of public image, right? I mean, not that they are, but
exactly. They're not even responding to the history. They're just responding to the Renaissance paintings of big muscle guys holding spears.
By the way,
they're like, yeah, haha, that's
like,
me. He's me for real. I gotta say,
just going back to Snyder real quick, that guy is like the amount that he focuses on muscly men in tight uniforms. That guy is like a hop, skip, and a jump away from being queer. Like, I feel like at some point he's going to have an awakening that, like, man, I wonder why I love focusing on muscly men in tight uniforms so much.
Yeah, there's just like this such intense. It's literally the ancient Greece and Rome, and I guess Zack Snyder in this metaphor as well. They're literally like the personification of that one joke that's like, I'm so manly, I only kiss men. I'm it's like, you're having sex with a woman? What are you, gay?
Yeah, that's like that Andrew Tate shit, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant.
It's
that man is just a he's a guy.
He's a beacon of thought. Not necessarily great thought, but thought.
No, you don't get it. Zack Snyder
he
and
sure
the big
has
muscly
thoughts,
men
that is
roommates.
for sure. Sorry,
to be clear,
go ahead,
we're not comparing Zack Snyder and Andrew Tate. We're not saying they're the same. Just being 100% clear.
We're not saying they're not the same either.
Oh, God.
No, we are. I'm saying that. I'm saying that they're not. I'm saying that they're definitely not the same kinds of
There's
people.
orders of magnitude there.
Have you ever seen them in the same room?
That is
true.
true.
A good point. Do we want to? Do you want me to go next for my comment? Or,
yeah, sure.
Yeah, you can do.
Yeah. Mine is one that I thought was really interesting. I thought about diving back into the High Top Films comment section again, but I think I'll put that on cooldown for a little bit because there's just so much there. So I'll talk about this comment that I got from my last video that I posted before I started working on my show. Actually,
You have a show? I don't think you've ever mentioned that.
What?
I don't think that I've ever brought it up actually. But for every year I do a movie tier list video, which is just basically just like a bunch of mini like off the cuff reviews formatted in a tier list format. And I do that partially just so that like it encourages me to keep track of all the movies I'm watching and try to watch more new movies. But they're also like fun to make. They're not fun to edit though, I'll tell you that. Anyway, I got a comment on it saying from Null Day 2534, they just say Resurrecting Dead Actors is bad, but a movie that excuses a war criminal and has sex pest in it 100% fine and undeserving of its backlash. Which
Oh yeah.
whew. So the I think
It's Flash and Oppenheimer, right?
it's Flash. It's definitely Flash for sure, because in that video I talk about how I don't like that they like did CGI resurrections of dead actors in that movie, which I still don't. It's kind of fucking ghoulish to do that.
Yeah, I don't like it. Like I love the film Rogue One, but I hate that they introduced that and that it's become more and more standard.
Ironically, Gareth Edwards is just like Oppenheimer in that one meme. Just like he's watching all these other movies, resurrected actors.
Yeah.
He's just like, what have I done? But yeah, The Flash is the most egregious example I've seen in a long time. But I'm guessing
The other thing there is, I haven't seen the Flash movie, but I've seen like the segment this is from, like with all the the reanimations and stuff. And aside from the moral like kind of quandary there, it just isn't a good sequence. It looks really bad.
It looks like
and it
shit.
doesn't.
Yeah.
And the pace, like there is no pace there. It just like grinds to a halt, and we just see like really badly sort of like generated composite swirling things full of guys we kind of recognize, and it's like, why is this in your movie?
It like the movie takes a like this is like I have watched the movie. It like the movie like takes a break and like stops to just like, okay, this big tense action where the worlds are colliding, whatever. Let's take like a 5-minute long segment to just like pan over all of these different like.
It is wild that they
stuff.
spent so much like money and also moral capital to make their film worse.
Right. But the war criminal thing and sex pest, whatever. I think the war criminal thing is Oppenheimer, because like like he's not technically a war criminal because he didn't drop the bombs, but like come on, whatever.
And if there's a film about someone doing something, that obviously means the film endorses it, right?
Yeah, that's the point.
I mean, there's a conversation to be had there about the sympathy of the film, but like, I don't think you can really say it in any straightforward way it endorses that.
Yeah, it's like I like the part in Oppenheimer where at the end of the movie he looks in the camera and he says
and smiles.
I'm so glad I dropped the bomb. That was the lesson of this movie, actually. That dropping the bomb was good, actually.
There will be no consequences. There haven't been any, and there won't be any. And then we cut to black, and there's a really kind of chirpy song that plays.
But the sex pest thing, the sex pest comment, could refer to Oppenheimer, because if you don't know, Oppenheimer did a lot of infidelity over the course of his life, but it also could refer to Jonathan Majors, I think.
Oh,
because in that video, I don't like Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Sorry to one very specific person in the audience.
You know who you are.
Yeah. But I don't really like that movie, but I don't hate it like so many people seem to. Like, I'm not going to be the type of person to do something like, I don't know, completely hypothetical here, make a 5-hour long video talking about why it's a disaster. But it's not a great film. But I did say in it that like I didn't hate it, but I did also make a point to like not to mention Jonathan Majors, because like he was a great performance in that movie. Don't want to give him credit for that just because whatever. But the thing about Jonathan Majors is that like his crimes aren't like sex related, so I don't know about that. I don't know if that's.
I guess it's just the kind of media distortion field, like you see guy dropped from Marvel projects because of kind of like assault, and like I guess maybe certain people's minds fill in sexual to the assault thing there, but
Especially because
Here
he's a man
again, we have
and
another-
a black man in particular.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's that
Bit of an
like
ick there.
there's that that stereotype on God. Anyway, I thought it was
Yeah, we have another example of the kind of modern art of the YouTube comment where it kind of resists interpretation. He could be saying a million different things here.
I also just like my thing is you kind of said this already with the Oppenheimer thing as kind of a joke, but like there are people who legitimately just think that like if you like a movie or if a movie has something in it, then like the movie is endorsing that thing, and if you like it, you like the thing. Because first of all, movies can just depict things and not endorse them. Like depiction is not endorsement. Yeah. I feel like that's a lesson you shouldn't have to constantly be relearning.
I feel like most people who are out of their kind of early teens know that, but like in our spaces, I think it has persisted in a few people, kind of loud minority of people.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll get the message one day.
But it's also just the fact that you can like something and also not like some of the things it depicts. Like like actually for example, I just watched The Breakfast Club for the first time.
Oh yeah.
So in case you guys, I don't know if you guys have seen The Breakfast Club.
No, I've seen it. Great film. Few very iffy bits.
Yeah, it's a great like character study. It's very, very well written movie about these kids in detention or whatever. But there's like this constant theme of one of the characters, Bender, I think he's called. He's not the robot. He's not the robot, but
he doesn't really respect consent.
Yeah, there's a couple of parts where he's like harassing one of the women in the movie. Claire, I want to say, she's played by Molly Ringwald. And it's not comfortable to watch, and also in the end,
because that's the case where the film does kind of endorse it.
Yeah, because they get together in the end.
The film and it's like she did like him, and she would have done if she gave him a chance.
He was just
like
he was yeah.
Ooh, don't love that.
It's one of the things that hasn't aged very well about that movie, and it did knock down my like personal enjoyment of it quite a bit. But I still really liked that movie overall. And I think there's this kind of like thing of, for some people, it's either an all or nothing thing of, if there's something in it that you don't like, you can't like the rest of it. You can't have this like, especially if it's more.
You can't
have
complex feelings about something, yeah.
Yeah, but but this comment feels very like trying to point the hypocrite thing of like, oh, you're a hypocrite because you criticize this movie for one thing, but didn't criticize this movie for another thing that it didn't do. That's kind of
very
weird.
TikTok era gotcha attempt.
Yeah. Anyway, unless you guys have any more comments on that, I think we could move on to Pillar's comment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, so I did think about just getting like a straightforward silly one for us to talk about, but there was one I actually kind of wanted to talk about in a bit more serious a light, and I'm gonna read it. I'll send it to TSD afterwards. TSD edits these, so for anyone who didn't know that, TSD is the guy kind of stitching it all together, uploading it, that kind of thing. Thank you for that, by the way, TSD.
No problem.
So you should be able to, if you're watching this as like a video podcast, you should be able to see the whole thing now. But I'll read you a selection, and this is from my recent video about the Apple iPad ad, where basically, if you haven't seen it, the conceit of the advert is there's this giant hydraulic press with instruments like a mixing desk, records, pianos, all this kind of stuff.
And, like,
the hydraulic
cameras.
press smashes it. Oh yeah, cameras. And we see the lenses shatter in slow-mo. We kind of luxuriate in the destruction. It's horrible. And then at the end, the press comes up and we see it's all been smushed into, well, it's all been destroyed, and in its wake is an iPad. The thinnest iPad yet. Yay.
Which definitely could withstand a hydraulic press and definitely won't shatter if you drop it 2 feet off the ground.
That's the point of that advert. Well, who knows what the point of that advert is. There's a comment from Bite Me 900 here.
Excellent,
so
excellent username, by the way.
I like it. Yeah. So Bite Me says, and again, I'm going to read the excerpts I think are most relevant here. I'm trying to process my emotions right now, so none of this is an attack on this video or on you in any capacity. I've been thinking about this video since it came out, and while you wonderfully described the justified outrage around the advert, I couldn't help but think, why are we even talking about an ad for a product that is directly being produced through genocide? once again, this is your job and you have to pay rent, so no shade on anything. Also, this is quite an interesting topic. Then he kind of, talks about the video a bit. And then he says, still, the giant elephant in the middle of your video while I was watching was the genocide in the Congo. Also, I don't expect you to talk about it or share your opinion on it. From what I've seen, you're anti-genocide. Just something that's been itching my brain, so I had to say it. And just off the bat, do you guys have any thoughts on this? Because I do have something. I've got kind of a response to this, but if you guys have any thoughts off the top of your head.
So I think that
in case you don't know, what they're talking about is the bad stuff's happening in the Congo right now, and well, it has been for a while. And as always, a lot of that is kind of induced by the extraction of minerals, a lot of which Apple use in their electronics, and the kind of
like cobalt
the
specifically.
Influence, cobalt, and the way that these companies like outside of the Congo are kind of the way they're trying to, it isn't like they're sending in death squads themselves, but the kind of incentive structures that exist because of them buying it kind of go hand in hand with some really bad atrocities. And so that's what this is referring to, in case you didn't know.
I think that it's a very delicate balance to walk with creating stuff and talking about things like this that are I think that hold on, let me like formulate what I'm about to say actually. Okay. I 100% agree with this person that Apple's role in what's happening in the Congo right now is frankly despicable, and I don't think that has to be said, but I just want that to be a prelude to what I'm about to say. And it comes back to it ironically comes back to the thing you were talking about with trying to figure out how to navigate something ethically and navigate things with ethical consumption under capitalism and what have you. Because Apple has such a dominance over entertainment and tech sphere specifically. They've got their own movie company. I feel like it's going to be a case of whatever they do, they're always going to be a part of this, and it's going to be hard to you can't always talk about that and be able to talk about the same thing just because they're different forums.
Is your point kind of that it's not really feasible to talk about all the bad things of Apple every time you talk about something Apple?
Yeah, because obviously there's the thing in Congo, but there's also just the fact that Apple is a giant corporation that uses stuff for bad things. Very descriptive. It's hard. It's kind of like a thing of...
All right, I've just seen we're slightly running out of time a bit, so shall I just kind of try and wrap this up, and then we'll get to the start of the Q&A section?
Yeah.
If you want to finish your thought, and then I'll kind of tie it up.
Yeah, of course. It's just that it's kind of like a thing of if we were to do that, we'd also... If we kind of set that precedent, then every time we talk about a Marvel movie, we'd have to also talk about how Disney has so many horrible things that they've done as a company to try and keep their dominance. And I think it's just, I think that there should be an implied assumption that when you're talking about a giant corporation and you're criticizing them, there's always the implied critiques of fuck Apple for everything that they've done that's led to what's happened in the Congo. But this video specifically is about a failure of their advertising department rather than it is a condemnation of Apple as a whole. I think that if the scope of your video is, to wrap this up, if the scope of your video is focused on something specific like an ad or a show something made, I feel like it's fair to assume that it would be stuck to that. But if you're doing a criticism of the company as a whole, then it feels more pertinent to mention that stuff.
Yeah.
I kind of think... Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I would just say that for me, this is it's emblematic of the failure of the idea of silence is violence, which is something I've spoken out against a little bit, but it's just that idea just ignores so much. First of all, right, often it ignores what someone has already said, just because that specific person hasn't heard it yet. But there's also like 100 reasons someone may not speak out about something, including, and this is perfectly fine, if they just don't know enough and they're like, I don't know enough to speak on this intelligently.
Yeah. And that's kind of part of what I wanted to get to with this.
Yeah.
Because what it made me think, because there was this in, I don't know if you guys watch any urban planning YouTube, but there was this thing recently, there was this kind of big critique video that went around, like urban planning YouTube is good for beginners, but it doesn't tell people how to like advocate for like actual change in their kind of communities. And a lot of people like that kind of take, but then my kind of response, my kind of gut feeling toward that as a YouTuber is like, the people that we're watching and we're saying, okay, this is a good video, it's informative, but it doesn't tell you how to do this other thing. Like that, we're kind of all taking for granted the fact that it is an informative video. Like the skill set and the knowledge base you have to make a video that's informative isn't necessarily going to overlap with the next step of, you know, knowing about urban design in this example isn't the same as knowing how kind of the process of making change in a community happens. And I don't think it's necessarily fair to expect someone talking on one sort of part of an issue to necessarily know the whole thing. So that's kind of what you were saying there, Adam. And that is part of the reason here. Like, I will say there is kind of a mistake in that video, because the point of that video I made was basically the point of that, because it kind of was relevant, because the point of that video was what we're seeing here, Apple, the fact that all of this is being made virtual, is being taken away from the material and turned into just an image, an advertising campaign. Like, that is a result of the kind of mythology of Apple, which necessarily takes us away from the material, because of, if it didn't, we'd have to contend with all of these material problems. And then I think I mentioned like lithium mining, and in my head, that was kind of a gesture toward the cobalt stuff and the Congo stuff as well. But it was a failure on my part not to know that lithium mining and cobalt mining are different things, and they're having separate bad effects. Like lithium mining is worse, I think, maybe in some ways environmentally, and the cobalt mining's led to obviously the genocide in the Congo, which we're all against. But I think that does kind of, the fact that I made that slight mistake. So I don't think I was completely ignorant of the elephant in the room. I kind of gestured towards it at the end, but I gestured toward it wrong because I didn't know enough about it to talk about it accurately, And so I mea culpa there is I should have got that right. I should have known better. But then the other point there is it's kind of what you were saying, TSD, which is like the scope of this video is the process of transferal from material to virtual, to the sign from the material. And I think the main thing is the scope of a video is the scope of a video. And it would be nice if the scope of a video could extend to all of the kind of controversies and interesting things that kind of are attendant to that, but A, for like kind of time reasons, and B, for just knowledge reasons. We're not all specialists in everything. It can't go that way. And that's kind of...
I'd love to talk about this more in a future video, future episode, especially like if we want to continue this conversation, we can. But I do think we do, because Adam has to go very, very soon.
Yes.
So I wanted to do some Q&A stuff before he leaves, and
just one or two of the Adam questions before he has to head out. Yeah.
Yeah. Q&A. Sorry for kind of cutting it short a little bit, but
no, that's fine.
Yeah.
And if I come back, which I would be happy to at any point, we can do the further questions.
Of course, yeah.
Time here.
Yeah. So okay. So questions.
What is your favorite superhero? How long is a piece of string? Where do we go when we die? Why won't my son talk to me anymore? Questions.
All right. So from Maple, we have, how would you like to see Ace rep to Adam? how would you like to see Ace Rep improve in the future?
Well, first of all, it just needs to go across more backgrounds. You know, people of any race, any ethnicity, anything. You know, any gender, anyone can be Ace. So that's one thing. We also have never actually had the word aromantic spoken, I don't believe. Often aromantics are just sort of thrown together with asexual people, and like aromanticism and asexuality are two separate identities. There are plenty of aro aces who are both, but yeah, aromantics are their own thing, and aromantic asexuals are their own thing, and romantic asexuals like me are our own thing. And so we need to get that nuance in there, and just in general have just like a wider representation of our community, because one of the things that is so great about asexuality is how varied it is. It's beautiful in how many... It's kind of like autism in a way, not in that they're like, one causes the other or anything, but in that there is a spectrum of, it's the same, like, if you know one person with autism, one person with autism, it's the same thing. Like, if you know one person who's asexual, one person who's asexual. It's all so different and unique and beautiful in that way. And we really need to have more ace characters to be able to show that variety. That is my personal feeling. Those are the directions we should go as a priority. There's also, there's more to do, but I think that our priority should be about expanding the diversity of the ace experience on screen.
Yeah,
sounds good.
That's
and
good.
Specifically, not just the ace experience, but the aspec, which is short for aromantic and asexual spectrum experience.
Absolutely. It's just there's so much. People tend to think that like once like the gay character has been on screen, that's like, oh, we've done it. We've made a gay character, or we've made an ace character.
Box.
We've made a black character, or whatever. But there's always like more and more experiences to showcase and just normalize and what have you. I definitely agree.
I also think that while we have had a few different asexual male characters, which is good, I think we need to actively explore a little bit more how asexuality interacts with masculinity and how aromanticism interacts with femininity. Because women are often defined by their romantic interests and men are often defined by their sexual prowess. So I think that those relationships between aromanticism and femininity and asexuality and masculinity need to be actively explored on screen.
Yeah, they're ripe grounds for interrogation.
Yeah. I also want to see just more relationships, not just romantic relationships, but all kinds of relationships that show people navigating these things in a healthy way.
Yeah, and not just have like the ace character be like, oh, I'm asexual. And then like that's I'm kind of like a trophy on the wall of like, asexual people, we don't have relationships or anything. We just like hang around and we are asexual and we get to say it, and that's what it's like. And it's like, no,
and there's
obviously.
a serious problem of potentially showing like aromantic asexual characters in particular being defined by the lack basically there's a whole issue about aspecs being defined by the lack of things, and that's both in fiction and in real life. Less defined by our experiences and more defined by the lack of other people's experiences. I don't experience sexual attraction and that's why I'm ace, because I'm not like other people. That
it's
kind of thing.
Drawing attention to the difference.
And what that sort of allows is I love the Owl House. Let me put that out there. And I love how wonderfully queer it is. But Dana Terrace, like, she did a whole big fundraiser for after Bob Chapek, like, funded the Don't Say Gay bill and everything like that. And, like, one of the rewards for that was a letter from the character of Lilith, and it was basically confirming that she was aromantic, asexual, but, like, didn't have to be in the show at all. Because
right, it's extra,
it's defined
extra show material
by the lack of things. So all you have to do is not give a character a love interest, and you can say they're aromantic, which is just cheap.
Yeah.
I also think just one last thing before we move on to another question is we need to figure out how to present asexual representation in kid-friendly stuff. Because often, you're going to get sort of like, oh, you have a character actively exploring their sexuality, and that's how they know they're asexual. And, like, that's not necessarily how it works. Like, I didn't know the term asexual, but I knew I was different long before I was, involved in any of that kind of thing and thinking about any of that kind of thing. Because the way I looked at the world was different. It just wasn't the same as other people. And what we really need is we need to be able to write characters that represent that experience without having to show characters having sex lives, so that kids can see themselves in things without having to wait to be like, oh, here is when you can start watching shows that might represent you.
Right. You don't want to cordon that off.
Yeah.
Well, Adam, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on. If you need, it seems like you need to head out. I was gonna like answer a couple more more general questions so we don't just do one question, but like that answer from you was excellent. And I think that was the best question you could have answered out of the selection we had for you. And obviously, if we have you on,
if you can stick around for a bit now, feel free. But if you've got somewhere to go, feel free to dip.
Yeah, I do, unfortunately. But I hope to be back and answer some of the other questions.
Yeah, I'm sure at some point. Yeah,
we'd love to have you back. It was great talking to you. It was great having you on the pod, on the POG even.
On the POG.
Yeah, and all of Adam's stuff will be linked in the description. Check him out. He's an excellent essayist, and
thank you.
I just cannot recommend it enough.
The official podcast stamp of approval is plastered all over his socials and platforms and such. Thank you again for coming on, and we will talk soon.
Yes. Lovely. Thank you so much for having me.
It was a pleasure.
Farewell.
And and then there were two.
And then there were two. Yeah, I mean, we are running timewards onwards. So that's not a sentence. We're getting a little bit deep in the old time code, but I think we've got time for a couple more.
Yeah, I just wanted to get at least like two more.
Yeah.
Actually, I have a question from Adam. Actually, so it'll be like he's still here.
Yeah, he's still here in spirit.
It's for me actually specifically. When did you decide to grow out your hair, and why did you do that?
Well, if it's for you, shall I ask that question?
Yeah, sure. You can.
Hey, TSD. When did you decide to grow out your hair, and why?
Thank you, Pillar of Garbage, the person who asked that question. Definitely no one else. So I guess the question comes back to, because I didn't decide to grow my hair out until before I knew most of you guys. Actually, it was in like it was like late 2021, early 2022. It's something that's actually a little bit personal, but I still want to talk about it. I won't go into all the details, but
lore drop.
Yeah, a little bit of a lore drop. So in like 2021, 2022, I kind of had a little bit of like a gender identity crisis a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Cuz so like I think a part of it came from what we were talking about earlier about how like I was thinking a lot about how I didn't feel like a stereotypical masculine man or whatever, and how I was a little bit different. And so I started experimenting a lot with like gender and stuff. And so it's part of like why I like some things that I did that were more like traditionally feminine that I tried out stuff. I tried like wearing makeup and stuff, which I didn't love, so I didn't keep doing that because I just don't like having a lot of stuff on my face. But I tried painting my nails and I liked that, so I kept doing that. And like I tried out like more gender atypical clothing. Like I wore a skirt a little bit, tried to figure out how that felt. If it didn't feel quite right, so I didn't keep doing it. So but I did eventually come to the conclusion that like, yes, I'm a man. Like I've explored that. I've messed around with it. I still feel very comfortable identifying as a man. I'm just not like a very stereotypically masculine guy, and I'm okay with that. Yeah. And I embrace some of the femininity stuff. But part of that was because into my entire life, I had very short hair. It was like the longest it would get is like maybe 3 inches, and then it'd be cut off again. But part of that gender experimentation kind of phase was that I grew out my hair for a while, and I like having my hair grown out, and so that was one of the things that stuck. So I just kept growing it out until about earlier this year. Actually, I decided that I had found a length I was comfortable with, and I've kind of stuck with that since. But it's longer than I used to have it be. So that's your TSD lore drop. It was a little bit of a joke in the actual question of like, oh, what's the lore drop?
No, but that's super interesting. Yeah,
actually was a little bit of a lore drop, and
yeah,
I absolutely encourage anyone listening to have a gender identity crisis because it helps you understand yourself a lot better.
Yeah, because like a lot of the moral panic is like, oh, yeah, obviously people would say stuff like, oh yeah, obviously you don't have to match up with the complete stereotypes of masculinity or femininity, and if we start letting people experiment, then we're going to have a bunch of people who accidentally transition, and it's like, well, no, actually, that's not at all it. Yeah, and it's like the thing is, if we just give the people, if we make it more acceptable to kind of, ask those questions, feel out a bit, then you're not going to have a bunch of people go on HRT for years by accident. They're just gonna, they're gonna ask those questions and get their answers. Maybe they do want to transition, and maybe they just want to kind of redefine what their gender is to them. Like there's a lot of ways in which I'm not kind of, I don't really match up to the kind of stereotypical masculinity, and I've never had that kind of that moment of crisis. But being on the internet in this day and age, you have to kind of ask yourself, am I sure? What is my identity? And like, I think, doing that is healthy. And a lot of the time, the answer will just be, okay, I am a man or I am a woman, but just not in the ways that like the media wants to kind of define that role. But just I am still that, just in a kind of wider way. But it's a completely healthy process. A really kind of useful and enlightening thing to do,
Yeah, it's like any other it's like any other kind of identity crisis, really, or any kind of identity experimentation. Like if you're in high school and you're experimenting with just like different styles, different clothing or whatever. Because this was in high school for me, so it was that era. But it's just expression, really. It's just different flavors of expression. And I think that experience also really helped me just like fully understand trans people. Like I interacted with a lot of trans people during that time, specifically to try to figure out more information. And so like that's kind of partially why I actually realized I was just like I'm a man, was because I was asking these questions about things.
There is something more to it than just not fitting the mold.
Right. And I was like asking like these trans women these questions about like what their masculinity felt like before they came out, and like they talked about like feelings that I had never felt, and I was like, my experience doesn't really match up with that either. And so there's that element of talking to each other and community, and I've also come to see that like I have I had respect before, to be clear. I respected trans people before. But I have so much respect for trans people after that experience, because the shit you guys go through, it's rough. Like, there's a little bit of me that was relieved that I turned out that I was just like a cis man, because like, I don't have to deal with that anymore.
And I think this is a super interesting and important little segment for us to for us to have had here, because like I think there are a lot of transphobic people, or at the very least people who are kind of echoing transphobic kind of rhetoric, that don't necessarily realize that it isn't just not matching up with the stereotypes. Like there is that kind of essential feeling there that you've always had that doesn't get sort of alleviated until you actually take those steps.
Right. And like,
I mean, I don't know if we have many of those in my listenership, but in case there's one or two, listen up.
and hopefully this will change at least someone's perspective on it, just because like it's not this, it's ironically, it's not this binary, which is a bit of a theme.
Who'd have thought? Wow. Oh geez.
It's not this binary of like you are like cisgendered, 100% fit the mold, or you're like a trans person. It's not like that. There's two categories, and some people just get sorted into the wrong ones. It's just
we
is a
are
spectrum.
not computers. We are weird balls of meat and blood and hair and stuff.
Yeah. All right. So with that nice one, I think we'll just do one more.
Yeah. We'll wrap it up. This is going to be a long episode. Maybe our longest yet.
Probably our longest yet. I mean, there'll be some stuff I'll cut out, but like whatever.
All right. That's the good stuff. That's the secret stuff our listeners don't need to know about.
Yeah, that's the secret little thing. Oh, this is a fun one that might be interesting. I think we'll talk about. We could like have a bit of back and forth about this. From Honey, what's a piece of media that you really fucking like, but the other doesn't like or hates? And it's Honey. She was the one who swore again. Just a real potty mouth.
We are disappointed in you. That is just that. This isn't the place for that. This isn't the fucking place for that.
This is not the fucking place for that, asshole.
This is a tricky one though, because like some of the server members would like to imagine otherwise, but we don't have a psychic link. So I don't really know what you like, and you don't really know what I like, other than stuff we've kind of talked about.
I guess we could like talk about some unpopular opinions we have on things, and see. Oh, actually, I know what we can talk about. Your reaction to my X-Men ranking. In the post, because this isn't necessarily a thing that we like don't like necessarily, but like when I posted my ranking, I had posted the Deadpool movies above X-Men First Class, and I think you said X-Men First Class is your favorite one, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is my favorite one, and like, it's my favorite one, and like, I wouldn't have sent a message if I'd seen like, I guess X2 or Days of Future Past or Logan, like above it, but like to see it so far down, and with the Deadpools, which I don't dislike, but like I mean, maybe it's because I've not watched them in years, but like, I don't think they wouldn't be in my top 5. I don't think seeing them above First Class. What are you cooking there?
Yeah,
this video of yours is going to be an abomination.
Yeah, I'm just gonna be full of bad takes, really.
Yeah,
but I guess my reasoning for that is that my perspective of coming into these movies is something I'll talk about a little bit more in my video. So I guess this is kind of a sneak peek into my thought process. I had always known of the X-Men. I'd always like known that they were a thing, and I'd known they were around. I knew Wolverine, and I knew a lot of like the characters by name. Like I knew who Jubilee was, and that it wasn't like I was a complete newbie or anything. But I never really had a connection to it. Like I never watched an X-Men cartoon as a kid, and like that was like a defining moment of my childhood or whatever. I never like watched any of the movies, obviously. In fact, the first time I really connected with X-Men shit was through watching 97 recently.
Yeah.
Because I was in the midst of doing my watch of all the movies, but like the second episode of X-Men 97 really connected with me in a way.
I think that super good timing, because that episode in particular, it's like it's not just a good episode. It's a really good kind of key into like why X-Men matters and why it's good like, more widely. Like it's like the legend to at the bottom of the chart that kind of lets you kind of match the rest up. I don't know.
Yeah, when I watched that episode of that show, like something like clicked in my head. It's like I had like this Danny DeVito moment of like, oh my god, like, I get it. But I guess my reasoning for that is that because of that, First Class, I don't dislike First Class. I like First Class a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Particularly the very intense romantic relationship between Charles and Eric. That was a real highlight for me. but it did feel like it felt like a little bit it kind of felt a little schlocky and weird in ways it's kind of hard for me to describe. Like the female characters in that movie aren't great. Like I don't love how like Raven and Moira are treated, and like Emma Frost in particular is just like an absolute nothing character in that movie.
Dare I say Matthew Vaughn gonna Matthew Vaughn? Is that a hot take? I don't know.
I mean, the only Matthew Vaughn movies I've seen are this and Argyle, so I want to know.
You haven't seen Kingsman?
I haven't seen Kingsman. No, it's on my list.
I was shocked then, but in retrospect, you're not. I suppose you're not missing a great deal.
Yeah.
I think they were really good when they came out, and they kind of maybe they fell off.
Maybe.
Do go on though. I do agree that the women are definitely a weak spot in that film.
And also just like there's just some weird stuff in that with Eric. I think Eric is fucking awesome in the reboot movies for the most part. Like Michael Fassbender's interpretation of Eric Lenscher, is that how you say it?
Yeah, Lenscher, yeah, for sure.
AKA Magneto is
absolute highlight of that leg of the franchise.
He's so good. He's so good in that role. But
it's like when you're watching like Apocalypse or Dark Phoenix, and like you're watching his scenes,
and you're like, wow,
this film is so good, and then it cuts back to the rest of it, and you're like, oh fuck.
Yeah, but I felt weird in that movie, like seeing his like iconic Magneto imagery coming from the Nazi who tortured him. That felt weird to me. Like that kind of felt like it was leaning a little bit into the they're just as bad
all bad guys are the same.
That was weird. And also it suffers from severe prequel syndrome of just like, oh, this is how Charles Xavier lost his ability to talk, to like walk.
Not as bad as Apocalypse though.
It's not as bad as Apocalypse.
Who can forget when everyone was clamoring to know why Charles went bald? It can't just be the fact that
male pattern baldness.
Most men go bald. Yeah, like I think it's like by the time you're in your 30s, it's like 1 in 3 men is losing hair. No, it can't be that. It has to be that he had his hair psychically melted off or some fucking bullshit. I don't know. Yeah. And what a joke.
But and also just like my interpretation is that like Charles Xavier just seems like someone who's very, very like conscious of his image and like conscious of his faults and whatnot. He seems very assimilationist, which, and the fact that like in all of his like psychic like envisionings of himself,
he's very naive.
He's always like walking when he's like in his mind palace or whatever.
True, actually, yeah.
So there's this idea of like he's kind of ashamed of his disability, maybe, and so
that's kind of interesting.
I always kind of thought that it was just that when he started going bald, he just shaved it all off to try and kind of like be like, I'm not going bald. It's just a choice.
Yeah.
But that's just a headcanon. Obviously, it's more important that was psychically removed. Yeah. But as for the Deadpool movies.
Here's just a note on there. Like, we were talking earlier about stats that they don't tell you about. When 1 in 3 guys starts to lose his hair by age 30, you don't necessarily see this. It's in the small text. You have to look for it, but that is actually because of the psychic energy. Apocalypse is out there. He's taken our hair away. He's probably going to come for me any one of these days.
Yeah.
If you don't have one of these Magneto helmets, you kind of screwed.
Yeah. I feel like that the helmets could be invoked for that reason.
I think so.
The reason I really like the Deadpool movies so much is just because especially the first one, because I got this distinct feeling from all of the X-Men movies that they kind of felt like they were a little bit embarrassed to be superhero shit,
Yeah.
Like they kind
of
Deadpool
totally isn't, yeah.
And Deadpool is like, say what you will about Deadpool, it knows what it is. Like it absolutely owns the fact that like it's this suit like schlocky, like kind of annoying, superhero stuff. And also part of it is that like the movies struck me with how shockingly like sincere they were, because a lot of the X-Men movies, like I like the X-Men movies generally, I think, but part of it was that it felt like they were always taking themselves so seriously, like I said, and part of that was
especially the singer ones.
Yeah, they were taking the things that they were taking seriously weren't just like the superhero stuff, but also just like the relationship drama. Like it felt like it was trying to be like this big epic relationship drama, and so when it wasn't, it kind of fell flat, and so I could feel that falling flat a lot more. But when Deadpool did its romance and was just 100% sincere about it, and then didn't try to make it like this big epic grand gesture kind of a thing. It really I liked it. It felt.
Yeah.
It
I think the
kinda
sincerity
hit
is what makes those movies.
Yeah,
Like-
I feel like if those movies were just cynical, like snarky whatever movies,
Yeah,
I would-
post Rick and Morty meta stuff.
yeah, if it
'Cause,
was
like,
just that, I would hate it. But like,
They could have been made like 100 times in that decade, and like 80 of those 100 times, they would probably just be made in that way, I feel.
yeah,
So
it's
it's super lucky that they actually they grounded it with like the sort of new sincerity of it that like even kind of Rick and Morty and stuff's coming around to nowadays. Maybe Deadpool's a little bit ahead of its time in some ways.
yeah. I think that Deadpool was a little bit ahead of its time in that regard, in that it's like snarky and cynical, and it's annoying, and it's not for everyone. But I liked it a lot because it knew that, and also didn't try to be pretend to be anything it wasn't. And in doing so, it kind of succeeded at making a more interesting romantic relationship than any of the previous movies, I thought.
Yeah.
Besides Charles and Eric, of course.
Yeah, well, obviously.
But I don't know. I think it was a nice breath of fresh air in that way. And I thought that Deadpool 2 kind of amped that up a bit. They kind of remind me of the Suicide Squad in that way, in that they're like really goofy, like comic booky and silly in that way, but at the same time they have this core emotional heart
maybe
to
the
them
other
that's really good.
maybe it's like the other side of the balance. Maybe Suicide Squad is kind of 60-40 sincerity, and then Deadpool is kind of 60-40 wackiness,
Yeah.
Maybe.
I do think the Suicide Squad is a lot better, just because the Suicide Squad is fucking awesome. It's such a good movie.
Great film.
But yeah, that's kind of my thing.
Okay. I've got something, and it might not fly because I'm about to drop something relatively obscure on you. Have you ever seen let me just check what year it came out in. Google. Have you ever seen the 2005 romantic comedy starring Reese Witherspoon and Mark Ruffalo, Just Like Heaven?
I haven't. I've heard
Okay.
it referenced, but yeah, I haven't seen that
So
one.
it's currently sitting at like, I think, so it's 54% Rotten Tomatoes.
So what's your opinion on it? Do you like it?
It's one of my favorite movies.
Well, then I hate
It's so
it.
unremarkable. Yeah, I mean, 46% of people agree, according to Rotten Tomatoes, because we know how accurate that stat is.
Oh boy.
But yeah, like that would probably be maybe I guess you haven't seen it, so not directly in line with the question, but in terms of the idea of the question being what kind of hot takes do we have about things we kind of disproportionately like or dislike, that'd probably be mine, because by so many metrics it's just such a kind of standard mid-2000s rom-com. But like if I'm surfing the channels and that's on one of them, I will not be touching that. I will not be touching that dial. I will be watching the rest of that movie through. I watched it twice in 1 week on Netflix once.
Yeah, it's kind of like everyone has like that one movie that's like they know they probably shouldn't think is good, but like they just love.
Yeah. Also, this is just a promise to all listeners. If I ever do get to the point where Patreon is a stable income and I don't have to be getting so many videos out the door all the time, there will come a hours-long video about Just Like Heaven. I will figure out why I like it, and I will tell all of you it in excruciating detail.
We'll do your 1 hour uncut, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's it. Probably
We're at the end of another podcast.
Yeah, we normally do like 4 questions, but we're already running over quite a bit, so probably
The
not
questions
ideal.
aren't going anywhere, and neither are we. We'll be back with another episode in the future.
Exactly. I have thank you all so much for listening to this episode. We post new episodes every other Friday, so don't forget to follow us on whatever platform you're listening to us on. If you're on YouTube, toss us a like if you liked and a comment if you had any thoughts. If you're on any other podcast platform, leave us a review. No matter what platform you're on, feel free to share and no matter what platform you're on, feel free to share the show with anyone you think might like it.
Send that link around.
All of those help support the show and ensure future episodes. Adam Myers, our guest, you can find him on YouTube as either Adam Myers / Adam Splitters Entertainment. He's on Instagram at Adam Myers5129, and he's on Tumblr at ASM5129 as well. You can find Pog on YouTube, Twitter, and Blue Sky Social, all under Pillar of Garbage. He also has a Discord server that should be linked in the description where you can have your own questions in the hashtag PoGcast Q&A channel read on the pod. You can find me on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and others, all under TSD Talks, or on TikTok it's TSD Talks, like TikTok. Yeah, I'm clever. I didn't come up with that, but someone else suggested it to me.
It's pretty good.
We also both have.
You got this intro locked down. Wait, this is an outro. You got this outro locked down.
Yeah, I wrote it down so I can remember it. We also both have Patreon pages that, among other cool perks, allow you to listen to episodes of the show early. Usually whenever we finish them, it can kind of range from like the day before to like maybe a week before. Yeah. And with all that out of the way, I'm TSD Talks.
I am Giller of Parbage.
And this has been the Pillar of Garbage podcast.
Thank you and goodbye.